Welcome everybody to the Sourceseeker Hour on Afro Vibes Radio, the #1 internet station in the world, Afro Vibes Radio Worldwide. I'm the host, Baruti Carl Alexander. I am the Sourceseeker. Thank you for joining us today on the Sourceseeker Hour here on Afro Vibes Radio. I am Baruti Carl Alexander. I'm the author of 7 books, including The Profound, Obama the Extraterrestrial, and The Spirited, Seeking the Heart, and The Sword, available on Amazon.com. I'm also the creator of the Brain Source Game Show, the game show of science and geography. Look for it on our YouTube channel. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on the Sourceseeker Hour. Today, our theme will be, who will be the next generational leader in this age of Donald Trump, a very precarious age? What is a generational leader? A generational leader brings about a new era of progress, energy, and perspective. This person could come from any industry. He can be young or old, man or woman, many different types of generational leaders. Mahatma Gandhi was a generational leader. John Kennedy was a generational leader. Martin Luther King was a generational leader. Barack Obama surely was a generational leader. We seek to have a discussion on who might be the next generational leader in this day and age. We have a great show looking forward for you. Today our guest will be educational consultant, Brother Nelson David Green of Educational Concepts. He's been an educator for 32 years, 14 as an administrator out in our community. He started his own business, Educational Consultants, in 1999, and now he is the author of Fathers and Sons, A Journey with My Seeds, which is a great and an informative book. We are going to have a great show today. Thank you for joining us on Afro Vibes Radio Worldwide. I am the Sourceseeker, and this is the Sourceseeker Hour. Sourceseeker is a media community. We write books, we sell books, we make videos. The Sourceseeker Hour will discuss current events, politics, and things relevant in society in an intellectual and profound discussion. This is the Sourceseeker Hour on Afro Vibes Radio, the #1 internet station in the world. Thank you for joining us. We're going to go right into our discussion today. Brother Nelson Green, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Oh, thank you for joining us today.
Inviting me to speak today.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, profound seeks out profound. Thank you, my brother. Yes, sir. When you look around the landscape of the world, what do you see in the possibility of leaders coming up in this precarious time that we have right now?
Well, I see a lot of young brothers. I see a lot of athletes and entertainers who are becoming activists and becoming more involved with the day-to-day things that are going on in our society.
Do you believe they have the combinations that it takes to take it to the next level, such as wisdom or intelligence, such as boldness, such as dedication? Do you see those possibilities of anybody out there? Because it took a great work for people like Martin Luther King to be steadfast in what they were trying to achieve.
I do. Society has changed a lot, and during the times of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, we as a people were still oppressed to the point to where we were afraid to speak.
Yes.
But this generation of young people, they're bold. They're not afraid. And you can't just tell them anything and they buy it.
But I must mention that there were some very bold people in those particular days, but they were in a lot of ways snuffed out. They were stopped. I mean, if you even go back to Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, they started their movement at a very young age. Fred Hampton was a young man. But all of those things, they came up against obstacles and they were snuffed out. What can change in this particular day and age?
Well, I think with some of the leaders that you mentioned, they got caught up in some of the societal ills, drugs, money laundering, things of that nature. A young man that comes to mind that I view as a leader right now is Colin Kaepernick.
Okay.
And he's a perfect example of someone who was willing to risk it all, his professional football career, to stand up for what he believes in. And we all know that he's being blackballed by the NFL. But yet again, that has not stopped him or deterred him from moving forward with his cause.
One thing I know is even let's say three professional athletes in basketball, not even the top tier, but the second tier of financial salaries, they could start a corporation, they could start a mutual fund, they could put together those things, but there is a problem of being able to get along and see that vision and be able to dedicate yourself to it. And a lot of people say black people, black youth suffer from the crabs in the barrel syndrome. What do you say about that?
Well, I do agree that we suffer from some of those maladies. However, I would also like to say that as we began to have these conversations and talk about the things that have prevented us from moving forward in the past, that's how you come to a common ground and avoid some of the missteps of previous generations. And as someone who works with young people all across this city, individuals across this state, I see a movement where, once again, young people are becoming more and more active. With social media, things aren't hidden the way they were in the past.
Can you tell us about some of your experience? I'm interested in what are you talking about? Fathers and Sons, A Journey with My Seeds, and other experience that you have had in the educational realm working with black youth and other youth.
Well, Fathers and Sons, A Journey with My Seed is a book that addresses a couple of things that go on in our community that it's typically taboo, mainly mental health issues. One of my sons, my youngest son, he's 23. Right before his 21st birthday, he was diagnosed with depression, generalized anxiety. He was suicidal at one point. But the thing that I am so happy about and fortunate to have going on is he embraces his condition. He doesn't run from it. He wants to get better. He goes to his therapist. He takes his medication, and he works hard every day to overcome and battle his condition. And what I see is a number of our youth have not been diagnosed, or a number of our youth are unaware of what they suffer with, and then the majority of the individuals in our community, it's still a taboo topic, a taboo issue, one that we need to address, because until someone who suffers with these maladies get the help that they need, they can't progress. Leaders will come from that group and carry on the work that needs to be done in order to move us forward as a people.
One thing I want to say about the diagnosis of special ed, or going further, mental illness, we have to be very careful. They wanted to diagnose me when I went to Rothschild Sterling with special ed needs and so forth for so long. And I might have had some of those needs, but my dad did not allow them to do that. He probably knew I was a late bloomer. I was the last one, did not have to go to summer school. And but I was always smart. I was just, you know, a malcontent. I just didn't want to behave. I just wanted to do things my way. And I see that in my son also. But he does not have some of the same get and go like I had at that particular time. Excuse me, it's a different age today. They have internet. They have a short attention span. They don't read very much. They have all these particular different things coming up against them. And if you don't have interactions with other humans, you don't learn how to deal with conflict. You don't learn how to deal with the ups and downs of life. So, you know, I see a lot of problems in how we can go to the next level. But out of those, I'm sure there will come some shining stars. You have anything to say about that?
Well, it's funny you talk about how someone who suffers with certain conditions look. For example, my son, as I stated, once he became an adult, a young adult, was diagnosed with these conditions. Growing up, looking at him and his surroundings, you would never have thought that. My son was a straight A student. He was a good athlete in school. He was very popular. He left Howard with a 4.0 GPA. So when you think of someone who suffers with the condition that he suffers with, he doesn't fit what most people think. But he shared with me one time that he could be in a room full of people who are showing him all kind of love, but he felt alone.
All right, we're going to take a break on this, and I'm going to come back and talk about the poem Richard Torrey and how that coincides with what Brother Nelson Green was saying. We're going to take a break right now here on the Sourceseeker Hour on Afro Vibes Radio, the #1 internet station in the world. Baruti Carl Alexander, and I am the Sourceseeker. Thank you and welcome back to the Sourceseeker Hour on Afro Vibes Radio. Before we left, we were talking with Brother Nelson Green, and I mentioned the poem Richard Corey. Richard Corey is a story of a prince, of a man who everybody in the town thought he had everything. They just were amazed at him. He was so fine. He was so perfect. He was so great. And then one day, he killed himself. And I was thinking about what you're saying, that you never know what's going on in somebody's head. Do you want to finish up, Brother Green?
Yes. As I was stating earlier, my son did not or does not fit the typical mold, if you will, of someone who suffers with depression, someone who suffers with generalized anxiety, and definitely someone who at one point was suicidal. Because
but yet you said that the leader or the generational leader may come from that group of people. What do you mean by that?
Because many of the individuals, I had to do some research once my son was diagnosed with these various conditions, because he lives with me. And so I'm his main support system. So I had to learn the do's and don'ts of dealing with individuals who suffer with those conditions. And one of the things that I found out in doing that is some of the characteristics that they possess. And one of those characteristics is empathy. They feel a lot of empathy for people. And that's one of the characteristics that a leader has to have. They have to be able to put themselves in the place of someone else and feel what they're feeling in order to be able to address some of the things that we're faced with.
All right, thank you. At this time, I want to introduce a special guest. Brother Pastor Reverend Aswad Walker has come into the building. Thank you very much, brother. Let me tell you a little bit about this brother. Yes, he is the pastor of the Shrine Christian Center of Houston, also known as Shrine of Black Madonna. He's a writer at the Defender Network, a freelance writer on BET on Black Productions, a lecturer at the University of Houston. He studied at Emory University. He studied at the University of Texas. He went to Willow Ridge High School. We're not going to hold that against him. And he also is from Cincinnati of the Bengals. Yes, thank you, brother, for showing up today. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me, brother.
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you for being here with us. And our discussion today is what makes a generational leader, and is there a generational leader that may come about, may be out there already? What are the qualifications that makes a generational leader? Do you have a intro comment on that?
It's a combination of attributes. Brother Man said you have to have empathy, and another way of putting that is you have to have a heart for people and a heart for service. And the generational leaders that I looked at from the past always came at it from the perspective of servant leadership. How can I serve the people, not how can the people serve me? Another aspect of being an effective generational leader is somebody who is fluid. They are not so stuck and tied to tradition that they can't change and flow with the changing times. So they are lifelong learners. They are unafraid of failure. They fail, they mess up, they get back up, they learn from their mistakes, and they apply that knowledge to their movement going forward. But they're never, ever stuck. And they recognize that what happened yesterday or what worked yesterday may not work today, and it may not work tomorrow. And so they are unafraid to make those difficult decisions to make changes to their institutions or to their movements, when most people want to stay tied to tradition simply because it worked yesterday. So they have a combination of courage, empathy, fluidity, and a heart for service.
That is great. In this day and age of the coarse dialogue, the backbiting, the negativity, is there room, and I want both people to answer this, is there room for that kind of leader, or is it too difficult of an environment, or is the environment the best place for that leader to come about? Let me start with Brother Green and come back to you.
Well, first, I personally do not view politicians as leaders, especially in the current political climate that we have now. They are too tied to worrying about getting reelected, and so they're wishy-washy. They go with the wind. Whichever way the wind blows, that's the way they go. And from my recollection, none of the real leaders who made a major change in our society were politicians. Politicians ultimately made some decisions after being forced because of the leaders. Leaders come from grassroots endeavors and things of that nature. And so
can you give me a couple of examples?
Well, from historically, Malcolm X wasn't a politician. Dr. King wasn't a politician. Medgar Evers was not a politician. Jim Brown was not a politician. Dick Gregory. I could go on and on about individuals who stood up for something and had a call to our people to stand up, and none of them were politicians. Politicians ultimately had to listen to them, but the politicians aren't the ones who generated the change.
From my perspective, I think Barack Obama was a generational leader because of what he dealt with. Now, did he follow all the precepts of maybe a evolutionary leader that changes everything, changes, a revolution of time? No, that wasn't his role.
But how did he start? And as a matter of fact, the former mayor of New York used to joke about the fact that prior to him coming into office for his first term, he was a community organizer.
Sure.
He made that seem like it was a big joke. There's no more activism than someone who goes out and organizes in the community. So, from that perspective, Barack Obama was an activist before he became a politician. So I'm not saying that it's impossible for a politician
Sure.
to, but Barack Obama was a special dude.
That's true.
It's not a whole lot of Barack Obamas walking around.
That's true. Brother Aswad, what is your opinion of that?
Okay, well, I'm of the opinion that we may be past the point of having one generational leader.
Sure.
Now, I'm with you on President Barack Obama's impact, generational, and in fact, I think we undersell the impact that he has had on us here and globally.
Yes.
But I think we're at a point, you know, with social media, with the world being so flat and all that, we are abounding in leadership. And I look at the Black Lives Matter movement, the way they organized. It was three sisters that had an idea, but their idea was not to hoard the leadership amongst them three. It was to set the parameters for what they wanted to do, was to stand up and voice their concerns and fight for justice, and then let the chips fall where they may. Let leaders rise wherever they may be. And that's how that is what has given the Black Lives Matter movement such life, such vitality, and such consternation from those that don't like it, because they don't have one person to point to and to take out. They don't know where to go.
Right.
And that's
right.
where we are. And I look at the millennials and their focus on entrepreneurship. They have a focus on entrepreneurship that is not just about putting dollars in their pocket, but about service to community. In fact, they look at their entrepreneurship as their community service. And so it is just motivating others. I was just looking at this one clip. This one young brother, 17 years old, has his own company, his own corporation. He developed an app called CopStop that seeks to help and save lives of young black people who may be pulled over by the police. You pulled over, you push your app, and all your loved ones are notified to where your location is.
Oh, man.
It automatically films whatever's going on. Out of the mind of a 17-year-old brother, and his mission, somebody did an article about him, and they compared him to Bill Gates. He said, well, thanks for the comparison, but I got a whole different agenda. My agenda is to use technology to save and uplift my people. That's the kind of leaders that I'm looking at.
That's the kind of generational leader.
Right.
Yes.
And
yes.
I'm excited because there's so many.
Yes.
Young, male, female, they're all over the place.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'd like to piggyback on
a
point that he made in terms of the characteristics of a leader.
Mm-hmm.
And I jotted down some characteristics, and one of the characteristics that I wrote down was someone who empowers others. And so when he spoke about the sisters who started the Black Lives Matter movement,
mm-hmm.
that's what they did. They empowered others, and that's what a generational leader does. That they don't hoard the power for themselves. They're here to enlighten and to teach and to be positive and move people and things forward.
One thing I remember, I forgot where I heard this, but they said a leader is not going to be the most well-behaved in the class. He's not going to be the most well-behaved in the class. I believe I heard that somewhere.
Is that a plug for yourself?
That's a plug for Baruti. He's describing himself.
Absolutely.
Yes. Also, a leader is going to be a nonconformist. If everything was okay, you wouldn't need somebody to come up and point things out that are going wrong. Hey, what's happening here? No, that's what a nonconformist, that's what a new generational leader is going to do. They may have different methods, different ways, but it's not just somebody who's a rebel rouser, it's somebody with a plan.
Right. And speaking to that nonconformist,
yes.
Because in the minds of black people for so long, our leaders were those who had the best rap, who were the best orators in the community. But I am so excited.
Or the most well-dressed, the best looking. Think of the story of Samuel.
All that.
Yeah.
But what I'm excited about is we seem to be opening up to the leadership capacity of all sorts of different individuals. Some folk just may be quiet, but they have a leadership capacity, like Brother Man said. Even in their quietness, they know how to empower others. They're not all male. They're not all boisterous. They're not all the charismatic, over-the-top folk. And so that's what I'm really excited about, because we're opening the door to having so many young and old sisters and brothers step up into that leadership role.
I want to give a shout out to our station, Afro Vibes Radio, the #1 internet station in the world. This is the Sourceseeker Hour, and I'm the Sourceseeker Baruti Carl Alexander on Afro Vibes Radio. I also want to give a shout out, Brother Godwin King, Tanzania, at the Tanzania Wellness and Mountain Retreat. He wants you to learn about the history of creation, tour the Serengeti and see the true experience of nature, climb Mount Kilimanjaro and look into the beginnings of creation, explore the Ngorongoro crater, where some scientists believe a spaceship landed and planted the seeds that started all life on the earth. Explore and experience the nature of life. Explore the Tanzania Mountain Retreat. If you are interested in checking it out, go to www.tanzaniamountainretreatviewlodge.com. It's a great mission to go to that part of Africa. I went there myself, and it was a great experience. I'll tell everybody about it another time. But this is the Sourceseeker Hour on Afro Vibes Radio worldwide, the #1 internet station in the world. I'm your host, Baruti Carl Alexander, and I'm the Sourceseeker. And we're having a great conversation today. We're talking with two educated brothers who lead young men, who teach young men, who have children themselves, as I do. And we're having a great conversation about what it takes to be a leader. What does it take in this age of Trump, this precarious time where a young black man can be in the wrong place at the wrong time and the wrong thing can happen? So we want more discussion of this, and if you have things you want to talk to our brothers about, we're going to get you their contact information. Keep listening, keep paying attention, and we'll learn some things together. Okay, generational leaders. As Brother Aswad said, you may not be able to recognize them. As Brother Nelson Green also said, you may not be able to recognize them. What does it take? I mean, how can we see a movement and say that is maybe going to go somewhere, or that brother is going to go somewhere? I remember when I was in school, very few people thought I was going to go anywhere. I was the last one that had to go to summer school. I had many different incidents in my school. My mother had to come up and get me one day after I got in trouble. Let's just say that. I could talk about it many different times, but I was not one that they thought would still be even alive today. But blessings upon blessings. So how can we kind of recognize and latch on and help that young brother that needs that kind of help? Brother Swad.
One of the things Brother Green said is that leaders empower others, and I think about Reverend Albert B. Cleage Jr., Jeramogi Bebe Hajaman, the holy patriarch of the Shrine of Black Madonna. He was able to see in you what you could not see even in yourself. And that's what I think about leaders, and that's a challenge for anyone who calls himself a leader or a teacher or a parent or a coach, is to be able to look at somebody who may not fit the description, or who may be a little more fidgety or acts up or acts out every now and then, but still see beyond that surface into what is at the core of that person. And so I think finding those leaders or helping to develop those leaders is one of the most important things that all of us can participate in. And it's really about developing the eyes to see the God in each sister or brother that we come in contact with. Because we all have that potential to impact other people's lives, to be leaders to somebody. And so, and I just want to say something real quick, because you mentioned a few minutes ago, you said in this really toxic world that we're living in right
Yes,
now,
sir.
where the political discourse is crazy, is this even the time or place to even have, you know, these leaders come up? I think it's the best time, because it will be revealed. You see how these white supremacists have just been so much more comfortable in showing their hatred and their ignorance and all that, and their vitriol just in their conversations, in their domestic terrorist activities, and all that matters. And so you have some sister or brother that stands up, and they come with empathy and love, and like you said, not only that, but they have a plan. They have a plan of action for moving from idea to action. Those people will stand out like a sore thumb.
Okay, when we come back, we're going to take a break right now, but when we come back, we're going to hear more about this plan of advancement in this precarious age. We're going to take a break right now on Afro Vibes Radio, the #1 internet station in the world, the Sourceseeker Hour. Thank you. I'm your host, Baruti Carl Alexander, and yes, I'm the Source Seeker. We have our two powerful guests, Brother Nelson David Green, Educational Concepts, and Pastor Aswad Walker, Shrine Christian Center and lecturer at U of H. We were having a very great discussion. We want to talk about what are some of the things that can bring about or nurture or help this young generational leader become all he can be. What are some of those qualities, Brother Green?
Well, I want to piggyback on something Brother Aswad said as it relates to nurturing a lot of our potential leaders. I saw an advertisement the other day that really rubbed me the wrong way. His brother, he has a program of some sort, and he's trying to recruit young African-American males to come into the program. And one of his pitches was the fact that he would show them how to wear a suit. They can wear something other than what they wear, but to wear a suit, and that they could be something other than a rapper or an athlete. And then he said, and use drugs and things of that nature. What bothered me about that whole way of thinking is that you don't have to dump on someone else or some other segment of the population to build up what you're trying to do.
Okay.
All athletes don't use drugs. Believe
Right.
it or not, all entertainers, rappers, R&B singers don't use drugs. And we don't have to go very far other than our television to turn on the television stations and see the things that doctors, lawyers, these high-profile professionals, the things that they get into. So the thing as it relates to nurturing, you have to be able to see the good in someone. You have to be able to see the potential in someone. In my 32 years of being in education, one of the things that I pride myself on is when I see a former student later on in life who's being successful.
Yes.
And they weren't the best student. They didn't always do what they were supposed to. There's one young man that comes to mind in particular who, doing a drug transaction, got shot in the hip. And he missed school and he came back limping. So I pulled him to the side and I said, brother, I like your entrepreneurial spirit, but there's a better way for you to get out here and make some money. I just threw out a suggestion. Maybe you can go get you a couple of lawnmowers and cut yards. Well, fast forward maybe 10 years. I was at a gas station on the corner of Airport and Leitrim.
Okay.
And I see this truck pull up with this trailer on the back full of lawn equipment.
Wow.
Guess who it was?
Wow.
It was that young man. So don't tell me what young people who are struggling at a certain point in their life can't do. But someone has to see the potential in them and nurture that potential.
Yes, very much so. I know I would not still be here if my dad hadn't held on and let me knock my head against the wall 1,000 times and still be there holding on and nurturing me. Brother Aswad, you talked about a plan, a plan that maybe a generational leader could get involved with. Can you expound on that a little bit more?
Sure, and I'll say this. I think any plan that's going to be effective in moving our people forward has to have these three elements. Number one, it has to have an element of enlightenment. It's doing something to bring us closer to knowledge of self, appreciating who we are, whose we are, our history, and our heritage. So enlightenment has to be there, because you got to feel good about who you are and that image that you see when you look in the mirror. The second thing it has to do, this plan, it has to have an element of healing. It's got to recognize that we are hurt and incapacitated individuals. What that hurt is, well, Jeramogi called it niggerization.
Yes.
Dr. Naeem Akbar called it internalized depression. Dr. Joy Leary called it post-traumatic slavery syndrome. But all these things just point to the fact that we are injured and hurting people. And so depression and anxiety and all these things, of course we are experiencing that. And so we've got to have some element of healing that recognizes just how important that is. And the third element we have to have is that plan has to have vehicles to move us towards self-reliance and self-determination, so that we're not projecting that victim mentality, but the victor mentality that I can, like Marcus Garvey said, what man has done, man can do. Up ye mighty race, accomplish what you will. It's got to be moving us towards self-reliance and self-determination. Now, what specifically that plan looks like, there is no specific way it looks. And that's the beauty of it. It can be played out in a myriad of different ways. And like Jeramogi Mentally Kimathi, the presiding bishop of our church, said, we want to pass this moving on to the generation that's coming behind us. And what they do with God's call on their life may scare us to death. It may not look anything like we think it should look, and it may make us very uncomfortable, but they're going to be led by Spirit to let God move them in the way that God moves them. And God moved us a certain way, and God's going to move them the way that God wants to move them. But I think it's got to have enlightenment, healing, and self-reliance, self-determination.
That's very powerful. Okay, enlightenment. That's like, I guess...
That's like this show. You're enlightening the listeners with the conversation.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Is it like also an epiphany going off after somebody has read something? I know many people have said the first time they read Malcolm X, they said, huh.
It's that, and it's also the teacher that takes that student to the side and says, no, according to what I just heard, the brother was dealing in drugs, and instead of just jumping down that brother's throat, he said, I recognize your entrepreneurial spirit. That was powerful. That was powerful. He recognized and celebrated the best aspects of this brother rather than beating the hell out of him about the negative decisions that he had to make. That was an enlightening moment that had an incredible outcome. How
can this healing take place? I mean, in this difficult world that we have, I mean, are we just talking about a mother hugging her son? Are we talking about, like Brother Nelson said, you know, that encouraging word? Or can it just take many forms?
I think it takes many forms. I'm kind of biased. I believe healing takes place best in community.
Okay.
Wherever you can find a nurturing and trusting community of people that has your back, even when you're at your best or at your worst, they're going to have your back. But healing, you know, I mean, it goes through prayer, meditation, fellowship, service. You can actually find some healing in the work that you do. So healing takes place in all kinds of different ways, but at its core, you've got to have a community, a family. You've got to have a place where you feel like you belong. Now, whether that's the church, the mosque, the community center, it don't matter. The football team, it doesn't matter. But some place that you feel like you are at home. These are my brothers. These are my sisters. I'm with them. We're together.
There's
okay, go ahead, brother.
Two things I'd like to add what Brother Aswad said. Healing also takes place when that person is in an environment where he or she does not feel like they're being judged. There has to be unconditional love. I love you in spite of what it is you do or what it is you're going through.
Let me just cut in. That is a very difficult thing in this world. I wrote an article one time that said stereotyping is a part of life. And now, in a larger setting, let's say in a classroom, you're going to come across stereotyping. You're going to come across people that don't want to nurture you. So, again, you got bullies in the world. I mean, I don't care where you are. Even at our age, we can still come across a bully. So how can we still nurture that healing in a world that has that kind of difficulty?
That person's a bully for a reason. That person needs nurturing. That person needs unconditional love. Because if you ever sit down and talk to a bully, they're hurting. And that's just their way of acting out to mask that hurt. And so, once again, that bully needs the same love, that same attention as the individuals that he or she is bullying. Another thing I'd like to add as it relates to healing, we have to, and especially as a African community, an African American community, a minority community, we have to be willing to look in the mirror and accept and be honest about what and who is looking back at us.
True.
Very
true.
Because until we are able to come to grips with who we are and how we are, we cannot begin to heal the things that are hurting us.
I agree with that. Can I make one last question? Vehicles for self, are we talking about financial? Are we talking about some kind of program that people connect to? What does that talk about?
It's more of a mindset.
Okay.
It's a mindset that I can do this. That I don't have to wait for Superman. I don't have to wait for the government. I don't have to wait for anybody. I can do this. Solutions are in here. That God has given me the insights and the creativity and the dreams and the passions to come upon solutions myself. Now, that does not mean that I have all the answers myself, but I recognize that the solutions start with me. And if that means I need to team up with you or find somebody, fine. But I'm not just sitting back waiting for somebody to rescue me. So self-reliance, self-determination, of course it's economic, but it's also educational, it's also political, it's also artistic. It's all those things. But it's more so a mindset, having a mind that I can do this thing.
I've been talking about recently, and since a while, I'll say, we have to build a small circle starting with ourselves and our family, and then touch other circles and your circle will grow, and then touch another circle and your circle will grow, and that's where you can start a strong circle. So if this organization is building a strong, nurturing environment and can mix with another like-minded organization that is progressing and moving forward, you have a stronger unit. But in the past, we have been saddled with a crabs in the barrel syndrome. If we can get past that, we can progress and move forward. Okay, we're going to wrap up about our discussion of a young generational leader. Can we talk about who are some of the potentialities? I see Chance out there. He's doing creative things. I see Brother Nelson Green mentioned Colin Kaepernick. Who are some of the people that you see that have some potential? Brother Aswad?
I see an army of social commentators out there, Angela Rye, Simone Sanders, and others. I look at them because they give voice to the pain of the people. But really, most of the ones that I see are folk who, I'm ashamed to say this, I don't even remember their names. I read articles about these people, whether they're young or whether they're old or just young at heart, doing great things to be nurturing, to be self-reliant, to offer healing to others. There are thousands, and all we get are the negative news and negative images about who we are and what we're doing or what we're not doing, But we just got to do more work to find those people that are doing great work, and we need to celebrate them ourselves.
People like Donald Glover, who's producer of Atlanta, and of course
Lena Waithe, who wrote The Shy, and
Okay.
Ava DuVernay, and all the
Ryan Coogler.
Black Panther,
Black
Creed,
Panther, yes.
Fruitvale Station, yeah.
A whole lot of people out there. Do you want to add in anything, Brother Nelson?
I guess in my capacity as a coach, I'm always around athletes and talking about athletes, but you have a brother like Brandon Marshall,
Okay.
who, because of his own issues with mental health issues, he is a spokesman for mental health. Mos Def,
Okay.
who's a rapper.
The mighty Mos Def.
Absolutely. Kendrick Lamar.
Okay.
As the brother stated earlier, there's a plethora of individuals who have the potential to be leaders. And the beautiful thing is they have the platform for it, because that's another crucial component of being a leader. Not only having that platform, but using that platform for positive.
Yes.
And so I see a lot of young brothers and sisters out here doing some things that are putting them in a position to really make a positive difference.
That's a great thing. We are just about finished up. Other issues that we are going to talk about down the line are different type of learning styles of youth and how we learn. Do we learn from the left side? Do we learn from the right side? Are we holistic? All those things can factor in, because what is the world that they're looking at, and how does the world judge them? I do what are called IEPs and ARDs, and there are certain things, certain measurements that they use to measure, that they use to say, okay, this person could do this person could do that. And is that a correct measurement? Is that a fair measurement? Is that a measurement that'll really tell the story? Well, these are other issues. Keep paying attention to the Sourceseeker Hour on Afro Vibes Radio, the #1 internet station in the world. I'm your host, Baruti Carl Alexander, and I'm the Sourceseeker here on Afro Vibes Radio, the #1 internet station in the world. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. At this time, before we leave, we want to get contact information from our guests. Please share. If anybody wants to argue with you, talk with you, ask you a question, please share. Brother Aswad, how can somebody contact you?
I'm on Facebook, Aswad Walker at Facebook. You can email me, you can cuss me out, do whatever. Aswad60@hotmail.com. Every Friday at 2 p.m. on my Facebook page, we do a Facebook Live. It's called Conscious Conversations. You're invited to join the conversation.
Brother Nelson Green?
I'm also on Facebook, Nelson David Green. Also, I can be reached at nelsondgreen3@gmail.com. Put me in email jail. I don't have a problem with it.
All right, that sounds good. And at this time, we're getting ready to finish. And I'm the Sourceseeker, Baruti Carl Alexander, on the Sourceseeker Hour. And you know you can reach me anywhere online. Talk with me, argue with me, share wisdom, or anything you want to say, and I'll tell you how I feel. That's who I am. I'm Baruti Carl Alexander, and I'm the Sourceseeker, and I'm on Afro Vibes Radio, the #1 internet station in the world. Thank you, everybody. See you next time. Have a great day. Thank you.